Happy Mercury Day, collective. How are we doing? I want to check in and first of all say that in our last video, I was kind of giving an outlook of the transits, the most major one being Pluto moving into Aquarius on January 20th, early the 21st, depends where you are, and how that was going to be its own sort of loaded subject because of just, yeah, you tend to notice Pluto, especially when it's been in the same place or same sign, I should say, therefore taking on the particular archetypal energy, that of Capricorn, for the last 15 years. You're going to notice when it shifts to Aquarius, the great humanitarian, the great liberator, the fixed air sign, you're going to notice. So I thought to myself, when you combine that with just the archetype of Pluto, and then you try to get into like the history, I thought we need to strip this down a little bit. We need to kind of section this off a little bit more so we can really understand where we're going. But, in order to understand where you're going, you might first should review where you've been. So, with tomorrow being the first lunation event of 2024, that being a new moon in Capricorn, which means that a new moon, generally associated with like planting new seeds, sort of setting new intentions, co-present with Pluto at the very last degree of Capricorn. We call that the anaretic degree, the 29th degree. It's going to be the last time, like in our lifetimes, that this happens, to where we have a lunation cycle in Capricorn, co-present with Pluto, and not just co-present with Pluto, but Pluto sitting at that anaretic degree. And what that generally means is when you have something at the 29th degree of a sign, it's like severe. You feel it. It's like all of the weight of that archetypal energy, good or bad, all of it expressed and like contained at that one point. So you combine it with Pluto, like the great destroyer, the sort of like scorched earth, so that the phoenix can rise from the ashes, planetary energy. That is that's a lot. So I want to talk a little bit in this video about Capricorn and focusing on the new moon cycle, because I do think that the way we, like I've said before, the way we think about things and our attitudes towards them is important. It's going to become even more important moving forward. And so I'm not going to sit there and jump right into like, well, let's jump into the absolute like chaos of like Uranus, which is the co-ruler of Aquarius, and Pluto. Like, there is not really any benefit of just like diving headfirst there until we sort of like set our intentions, which is like the natural cycle of things, I guess, being at one in right relationship with nature, as this channel is always urging you to do. Let's take things as they present themselves to us. And so for right now, it's sort of reviewing where we've been with Pluto in Capricorn, and more importantly, in terms of with an eye on the future, where we're going, where we are going, what new seeds are we planting for our new moon in Capricorn tomorrow. And that would be January 11th, 2024. So before I go on, if you're watching this and you have already subscribed, welcome back. I appreciate you. Always glad to have you. I hope that the content continues to keep you intrigued, at least, and sort of engaged, and makes certain parts of your wheels and your head spin that like you're not used to having spin. that alone is a powerful source of creativity. And like this being Mercury Day, I think that that's always like a thing to exercise, let your brain be expanded in areas that maybe are uncharted territory for you. And you'd be surprised what that can do for your creative spark. So, like I said, if you have subscribed, I appreciate it. And if you're just coming upon this video and you are at least, I've piqued your interest for now, I would greatly appreciate if you went to the channel page and hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment, even better, do all of those things. And that's sort of my indicator, number one, of the fact that this is stuff that you guys find engaging. I'm going to keep making content either way, to be honest, but I would like to steer it in the direction of sort of meeting the audience where it's at, because I like talking about these things, but I would like even more for it to like equip you with a way of feeling connected with the earth and the natural cycles of things, in the way that learning this and studying it for so many years and continuing to study and engage, but more importantly, um, the rhythms of nature and the not just lunation cycles, but like the planetary transits in a world where there are so many moving parts. It it can feel hard to have like a solid ground. And as weird as it sounds, sometimes the best way to feel grounded is to look up at the sky, to like go above, because there is a oneness. The plants and the planets, our animals and us, all of it. It has a way of making you feel tethered when there are so many moving parts around us, especially in this fast-paced digital world that we're moving in. I do think that these cycles have helped me tremendously in a way that it's hard to explain if you haven't sort of given it a chance yourself. So I urge you, when you've tried everything and you're sort of like desperate for a way to feel connected and tethered and sort of the master of your own ship, when you've sort of like reached that end point, you're just like, give me what you got. Like, it seems like it's gotten you on some sort of stern footing. So like, give me what you got. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help those who really do want to find a better way for themselves and feel more connected and come back to your own body, like coming back to your own body. And for me, nature and the natural cycles of things has been sort of an inextricable part of that. So here we are, getting our hands on some vegetables, things from the ground, while talking about things in the sky. So you probably have noticed in the foreground here, we've got the devil card, just a little light conversation about the devil, right? Um, it's it's not as menacing as it looks, although I think the visual is quite effective at communicating um, the shadow side of Capricorn. Capricorn, tarot, the major arcana, the devil card, number 15, is associated with the sign of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. And this isn't to say, because I'll say this over and over, we all have every archetype governing some part of our lives. Within us all are the 12 archetypes. They just sort of are the colors or archetypes or masks or ways that the energies of the planets, the intelligences, however you call them, play out. So depending on your chart, it will be a different area of life for you, for everyone. Some people have planets there, some people don't. Either way, you have the Capricorn archetype within you. So don't be offended if you're a Capricorn sun or if you have Capricorn as major placements and you're like, I'm not the devil. Well, this applies to all of us equally. Everyone has the duality of every energy within them. And so this card is meant to represent the shadow side of Capricorn energy. I mean, you see the inverted 5-star pentacle on 5-pointed star, the pentacle above the devil's head. It's not really hiding the dark energy associated with this card. But Capricorn, going back to, let's take a step back into its just ordinary meaning. I've said in another video, the elements and modalities video, Capricorn is cardinal earth. So cardinal initiates, just like Aries, cardinal fire initiates spring. In Cancer, cardinal water initiates summer solstice. Libra, cardinal air initiates the autumn. Capricorn, cardinal earth, is the initiator of winter, and there's nothing more Saturnian than winter. So I've said this before in other videos, I think talking about Saturn, which is the single ruler of Capricorn. Everybody wants to poke fun at the serious earth grounded energy of Capricorn, who like hunkers down and makes a plan to survive the winter and the conditions of harshness. It's easy to poke fun at Capricorn, but like when the going gets tough, you're going to be glad that you had that grounded Capricorn energy. It's solid Saturnian, going to get us through the winter. So Capricorn, in its balanced state, it initiates the long-term plan. So I think that this is an exceptionally fitting sign for the first new moon of this year to occur in. And like I said, that's going to happen on tomorrow, the 11th, at 20 degrees of Capricorn. And so one thing we do in astrology is in order to get sort of an idea of the energy, aside from just Capricorn energy, that will kind of characterize this cycle or this particular new moon, we look at the ruling planet, which is Saturn. And when we look to see in the sky where Saturn currently is, well, that's in Pisces. So there's sort of almost this like softening of the edges, you might say, because it's ruled by Saturn in Pisces. And Pisces is, the mutable water. It's the ocean. It's like all those feelings, the last sign in the zodiac before we go back to Aries. So there is like an emotional component to this, but not so much in like a drowning and like Neptunian kind of way, really. Although Neptune is co-present with Saturn, which is not irrelevant, but more so in like a how are my existing structures serving my sense of purpose and fulfillment? Like, am I in a place of emotional fulfillment? And if not, could that possibly be because of the structures currently in place in my life? By structures, that can mean a lot of things, like not just like your daily habits, but like your own personal sense of your value system, maybe, which when we look at how Capricorn, and especially Pluto in Capricorn, has highlighted hierarchies and social structures and systems and the power, the distribution of power as a result of those structures and systems, financial and otherwise. That's what the Pluto and Capricorn transit for the last 15 years has been all about. And it's almost like as we're on the eve of it moving into Aquarius, in our own personal little lunation cycle of this new moon, we're sort of forced to like feel um, almost like in alignment, whether we want to or not, with the grander cycle. Like the themes magnified on the world stage, and like in like even like where you live, your country or your state or whatever, it's all sort of like ringing the same tune. It's like it's sort of giving like, is this sustainable? And like inside you sort of already know the answer. But it's also tempting to like shut down because you're like, well damn, like where do we even start? Um, and where you start is with you. Remember the whole point of the channel. You can't heal our relationships with one another, so like interpersonally, but like societal, until we've done so with ourselves. So here we are, assessing our actual own value system. Like, can we expect society to reflect something better and more equitable and more fair and more like in alignment with like the greater good, and like sort of an evolved state of humanity, like moving into the future? Can we really expect that from our social structures if we ourselves have not had this little like assessment in the context of our own lives? Like, is it actually even grounded in reality to expect our institutions to reflect something better when we ourselves like have derived our primary sense of value from the status quo? So, and this is like, don't get me wrong, I'm right here too. Like, if you're watching this, there's a chance in some way, shape, or form, some more than others, that the status quo of economic, social, professional, whatever, a hierarchical system, and like the way that the things that we value, tend to value collectively in society are distributed. Chances are that we've all benefited from that in some way, shape, or form. So this is where it gets really uncomfortable. Is how attached to that identity are we in terms of moving forward? How much are we actually embodying personally a more evolved sense of what the value systems of the future, and like a more interdependent future? How much are we actually embodying those, and in what ways can we make these shifts, like reset the paradigm so that we don't have it reset for us? So these have been like the issues of Pluto's transit through Capricorn. So, when it first entered, that was 2008. And if you really want to understand how literal sometimes the archetypes can play out, well, when Pluto made its little march into Capricorn, which represents financial institutions and power structures and systems, we saw the great financial crisis, right? We saw the great movements of like sort of, hey, wait a minute, this isn't sustainable. It was sort of, yeah, it's like the result of like long-standing things, but like once Pluto entered Capricorn, it was like, all right, everyone, make way. Like, this is sort of the twilight era of what has been, and the next 15 years are going to sort of bring to the forefront all of the reasons why. So, for a while, it's funny how Pluto going through the different like degrees, it enters at 0, and then here we are now at 29, and that has taken 15 years. Only goes like 2 or 3 degrees a year. So um, at the earlier degrees, it's going to sort of encompass like all the possibilities of Capricorn, like good or bad. So it was sort of like the sort of Occupy Wall Street thing, whatever you thought of it, it was sort of like this awakening, sort of like, hey, it seems like other people see things the way I do. whether that was the way you want to draw attention to or not, it actually doesn't matter. It was a way of sort of awakening something collectively, and the way you reacted tended to often show how much you have benefited from the status quo or not. I mean, no judgment, it's just true. uh I'm not going to go camping out in a tent like on Wall Street, but like I like that other people did. I'm going to be honest, I like, because it got people thinking, like especially people that have benefited, and they just like, I always say it's not your fault that your life has always worked out. And I believe that, like, you only can see things through the lens of like what your own personal life experience has like offered. So, a lot of people for the first time really started to have their eyes open to like inequality, and how like being encumbered with debt because you're trying to reach higher for yourself and out of sort of like your family's story, how that has that burden has not necessarily been shared in a way that tends to be in alignment with the American ideals and like the American dream and all that. It was something that was like a long time coming in terms of being brought to the forefront, and like it wasn't sustainable. Why? Because we as a country had built ourselves upon a set of ideals that we ourselves in our systems and institutions weren't living up to. So it would have been different, honestly. Pluto's journey through Capricorn would have been different had we not established ourselves as like that sort of like shining city upon a hill. But like that was us. That was our we founded ourselves with a certain set of ideals. And so when we just like a person, when you get too far out of alignment, well, Pluto's job is to let you know, and to more or less bulldoze whatever is not tending to support what those ideals, that sense of purpose or the stated sense of purpose, tends to bulldoze whatever is not going to support that. So when we go to our devil card over here, we saw, when we look at Pluto's transit, especially at the degree of severity, the anaretic degree, have you noticed, especially in the last year, it's almost been like um, this being exposed, that being exposed, and like, wow, like these powerful men in charge were doing what? And like these powerful people over here were getting away with what? And like, oh my gosh, is it really like these people have that much more than these people? It's been almost like comically um, one thing after the other. And that is sort of the nature of it. It's sort of like um, you feel it's like a busting at the seams. You're like, it cannot get any more like loud than this. And that's, so for better or worse, it's supposed to feel like that right now. Sort of like the container is like full, and like the bolts are about to bust, and everything's just gonna like crumble. And I don't mean that in terms of like society. I mean in terms of like the status quo of allowing that degree of being out of alignment with like what we still say our state of purpose as a country is. Something has to give. So just like times in history, before the actual like change happens, it's generally preceded by like a decade or two of like the protests and like the people in the street. It's has to be preceded by someone saying, hey, wait a minute, and then more people saying yeah. And the the disruption and the unrest, and like, you know that's why protests itself, it's not just like, oh, people today, everyone wants to protest everything. No, it's just that anytime anything in history has changed, it's going to be preceded by people making it hard for others to feel comfortable in the spaces within which they feel that they have been unfairly excluded. And that has a lot of different applications, but that's why I always say, like, it's easy because of our proximity to these things to feel like we are just in the most chaotic, like, screwed time ever. And if you look at it that way, I'd be careful, because like you're gonna you're gonna be maybe unintentionally a part of the reason why that ends up to be true. Like you shouldn't look at it that way. Not because of any sort of like value judgment that I'm making, but because um, we're all here witnessing these things for a reason. Like we're not just some like passive, like powerless people. We have like the intellectual capacity to observe, like, and use like the patterns of history, and then like the sort of intuitive nudges we get about like the possibility for the future, and make something better for ourselves. Like we don't have to just have this like defeatist attitude of like, oh, everything's screwed and you know nothing's ever going to change. um I wouldn't be on this channel if I believed that was true. And if you applied that to your own life, like in the microcosm sense, well, that just seems not credible anyways. Like tons of people make um miraculous seeming changes in their lives, and it's not done overnight. And often they'll say that they're not really quite sure how it happened, but the one thing that they can tell you is that they just decided it was going to happen. They didn't know the way, they just decided that it was going to be better. They decided that the version of them next year and then the year after that was going to be better. And that's what I want to really focus on with this video, and like driving that point home, because I would say that the devil card energy and the negative, the shadow side of Capricorn, um, instead of looking at like what using that cardinal earth energy, like I said, cardinal initiates the tone, like, initiates the long-term plan. Is your long-term plan really going to be like rooted in a sense of defeatism and sort of like a nihilistic point of view where it's like, well, sort of carpe diem, like what difference does it make? I mean, I wouldn't recommend that because like I said in I think the temperance card video, where it's like the declaration, once enough crumbles in your life and you never saw it coming, and you thought, wow, I never thought I would lose this and that and be just totally heartbroken about this, and you go, wow, I guess anything can happen, like that, with like a deliberate alchemical process that you sort of initiate using your mind and your head, turns into like you smiling and going, wow, anything can happen. That same thing is the exact same realization, is the same one that saves you. You go, wow, like, well, let's not speak too soon about what can or can't happen with my life, because I never saw this like total pile of shit coming. But because of that, when you really sit there in that rubble, you start to realize like, wow, like who knows where I'll be next year? Who knows? Like it could be far better than you've ever imagined. Like, so you have a choice as like a rational thinking being. You could go, well, you never know how bad it can get. Right, but like, what if you started saying, you never know how good it could get? Because that is, I think, the energy we need the most right now. And for ways that are beyond my understanding, and I could try and I could get into quantum physics and like the really funny things that particles do when like really smart people look at them under really like high tech microscopes or machines. Even the matter that we call physical matter behaves in like insane ways when observed up close, in ways that defy our understanding of what is possible versus impossible. And so then you realize what a waste of time it is to sit there and like look around and see like this news story or that news story or this like version of the hellscape or that version of the hellscape. Do not let it uh, make an otherwise vast world of like unseen possibility. Don't let it muddy it up for you. because I would argue that the story is still being written, and we are all conscious co-creators of it. And so the state of our mind is extremely important at times like this. So um, don't let that devil energy, which you see, I guess words that I would associate with this card are obsessiveness, control, manipulation, maybe codependency, toxic thought patterns, um, which often is kind of linked to toxic behaviors, but it starts with the thought pattern. Let's see, I said addictions, self-sabotage. You see all these words are pretty much like shades of one another. Uh, Rarely does one exist like without at least a few of the others. And in terms of the illustration, I think it's really interesting. We haven't done the Lovers card yet in tarot, which is another major arcana, but what this essentially is like the lovers depicted on that card, except in the devil card. And what you see is they've got these chains around them, but the chains are loose. Like it's sort of which it suggests self-sabotage. They are under that sort of devil energy of their own volition. They could take the chains, they could slip them right up over their own heads at any moment if they wanted to, but they choose to stay here. They choose to stay in this energy. And while it might get them something in the immediate term under like sort of a lower vibrational set of values, like lust or greed, or just hyper focus on material gain. Because remember that thing about Capricorn that is solid, that gets you through the winter, that makes the long-term plan to get our harvest from the fall, to like divvy it out and ration it, that's Saturn, to make it last until like the bulbs of spring pop up. That same energy can become unbalanced, and it can become obsessive, and it can become like Uncle Scrooge. It can become like preoccupation with material wealth, material gain, accumulation of like things in the physical world at the expense of your spiritual development. And that, of course, is Capricorn at its balanced state is responsible not only for themselves, but because of that sense of responsibility and self accountability, they often tend to be able to be responsible for others, not in terms of you're responsible for other people's behavior, but leadership. I mean, you willingly and gladly and proudly take on like sort of like mentorship roles, or like team leader. That's part of the joy of Capricorn. It's like that sort of that self mastery and that discipline. Saturn in its most positive vibration. um, Other people can rely on you, and that itself is like a large part of the reward of being sort of like a self-integrated Capricorn. But in order to do that, you got to be aware of the shadow side of Capricorn energy, and your ability to accumulate and master, um, and sort of initiate the long-term plan for the long haul. um, there's always that temptation to use to press your advantage. And when you're doing that. And that's, again, becoming the master of yourself. You got to sit there, and when we go to this Capricorn new moon and we consider what our current value system is, and whether that's in alignment with like who we want to be, not just now, but like, what about future you? Maybe you're down on yourself now. I've been there. Try framing it in terms of like, well, I'm having trouble with my like positive self-talk now, but like future me is like so damn awesome and deserving. Future me deserves to feel in alignment and to feel proud and to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor, like um, even the material gains from it, enjoy it without feeling that sort of ickiness of like, who did I have to step on and manipulate um, and press my advantage over to get this? And that right there is a recipe for just like the toxic thought patterns, like being stuck in that energy. Often people choose to stay in it because they, it's almost like in order to heal, I think some people realize that that will require like an honest sort of inventory of what has come before. Like you might say that like you feel that the people who have power now that have benefited from it for the past 15, 20 years, you might feel this like desperation. Like to me, it's giving desperate in a lot of areas. You look like people like sort of clinging, like, no, like that last gasp of like power. Um, that's sort of what happens when you feel the like winds changing, and instead of surrender and maybe just be like, well, I got mine the last 10, 15 years, like it's, I think what people resist the most is once they lose power, not thinking that they won't have enough, although I'm sure that that's part of it. It's sort of like when you're knocked off the throne and then you sit there, even if you have plenty of harvest and pentacles, whatever you need to like make it through your days. It's that like that state of now you have to reflect upon like how you got it, right? You have to reflect upon do I feel like I've lived in a sense of purpose and like lived in alignment with like who it is that my young ideal stage, starry-eyed stage that I said that I would set out to be, or did I live up to those ideals or not? And I think some people fight tooth and nail to never have to go through that assessment. So this is no judgment. I'm just saying, save yourself from being that person. And before you plant these new seeds, ask yourself, what can I do to avoid being like miserable and desperately clinging to power in 15 to 20 years from now, when maybe like there's like sort of a new era of like people with new ideas who have different ideas for society. And you know, you got to sort of no one wants to think that they're not aging gracefully, and to me aging gracefully is very much sort of like an honest assessment of like, is it time to step aside? Like, is it maybe time to let someone else like get their ideas heard and sit in the seat of power and have a say in how society goes, and in how, you know, how can we make it include more people instead of just like me, like I like the status quo because like I happen to benefit from it a lot. Like, you know, there's like sort of a lack mentality in that, which is ironic because often it's like the people that have the most that like have the most fear attached to not having enough. So you don't want to be that person, whether that's like in terms of like possessiveness or obsessiveness over like relationships, um, money, but also just like material things. Like we all love our little treats. I love my little treats. Everyone loves their like pretty little things, but that's also another manifestation I do think is funny astrologically. I'm not going to call out any products by name because I don't want some like a big corporate somebody coming in on my little channel. I don't know. But you see this like almost craze over things that you're like, is everyone okay? I mean, like to where people are like knocking each other out and like um putting all this value on like objects that like aren't intrinsically, it's not like these are gold bars or something. It's like a thing that like seems to have more power than it should over you and your sense of well-being. And if you don't get your hands on one, like You allowing it to like make you feel a sense of failure and like, oh, I'm a have not now. um and we've seen that ever since, like, I mean, we live in a very a capitalist society, which is very much themes of Pluto and Capricorn. That's why you can blame whoever you want in like politics or whatever, but like the planets, we're exactly where we're supposed to be right now. I find comfort in that, to be honest. I don't know if that's how you see it, but I do encourage you to consider that that's like a really personally helpful, at least to me, way of seeing it, because when you understand the archetypes and the energies of the planets moving through them, it's going to bring to the forefront certain themes, and depending on how we've organized society up to that point, that's going to sort of dictate what it looks like. So for what it's worth, everything that looks to be sort of a mess right now is well, that's sort of because we've made it that way over a long period of time. Like Saturn, remember Saturn rules Capricorn, so, and that's karma, the karma planet. Karma is simply just like the natural consequence of a series of behaviors or absence of prudent behaviors over time. That's all it is. So karmically, as a society, we're exactly where we should be. Karma is very much attached to like, oh, you get what you deserve, and you can be like, well, I didn't do anything. That's not how it works. Like, you're part of this society, and this society is experiencing its own sort of karmic moment, but that's not to suggest like a sense of doom. It's sort of just like facing any consequences. Maybe look at it as like an opportunity, an invitation to be like, okay, what plan for the long term can we initiate? What new seeds can we plant under this Capricorn new moon, so that next year you can look back and be like, yeah, those were good seeds to plant. I'm glad I didn't plant the same seeds I did last year or the year before. Um, when you have new information, don't be one of those people that is afraid to change your mind, right? Like some people think, oh, being confronted with new information means like I have to acknowledge that I did this wrong or I could have done this better. I mean, it could mean that, or like you could just skip that part and just be like, okay, well, cool, now I know better and like do better. Who cares? You know, I'd rather have new information and like more to work with and kind of helping me make decisions on what seeds to plant now than to not have new information or a new way of looking at things. So maybe try that out. See if it helps you lighten up a sense of doom of always being so sure that because everything has always gone this way, that it always has to be that way. I mean, I don't know about you, but personally, like 15 years ago, I was at an entirely different stage of my young adulthood. And so I'm like not exactly married to any one way of thinking how society should or is going to look in the next year, 5 years, or whatever. I'm like, well, it could go really bad, but it could just as easily go really well, like in a way that I didn't contemplate. And so as a rational thinking being, like who actually believes that the story is still being written, both just personally, but you know, the stars say this, the planets tell me the same thing. Um, well, I'm not going to contribute to any sort of uh, collective thought that tends to like diminish our potential and diminish like the possibilities for what this country can be. But just like lots of periods of change, like I say all this because look at last 15 years, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing all the time, was it? But now it's almost at that next stage. It's like, okay, well, Aquarius, what happens when Pluto, that sort of great sort of clearing, I say the destroyer, but I mean it doesn't destroy what was like solid. It destroys what was like the house of cards, so that you can actually have like a solid foundation to build upon from there. Like if the foundation was solid, Pluto doesn't destroy it. So um, if in your personal life Pluto is clearing some things out of the way, or has in the last like year or two, because the energy of Pluto at the last degrees of Capricorn has been present for the last, definitely last year, last 2 years, more or less. Don't feel like some sort of failure. Just know that that wasn't going to be a place where you could build anyways. So the possibilities are actually endless for you, whoever you are, for real. I'm sticking to that story, and I've had that mentality like aggressively so for the last year. And I have to say, I never would have thought I would be standing here saying these things with the conviction that I am, to a bunch of people online who might come across this tonight or like 5 years from now. It doesn't matter. There's no way in a million years I would have foreseen that a year ago. So a lot can happen in a year, for better or worse, but emphasis on for better, right? And that's where I want you to put your efforts, because like what's not exactly favorable, well, that tends to like happen anyways. So are you going to give it all of your energy and obsess over it, or it's like, well, that's that. I mean, I better use my like higher mind to get back to thinking, okay, but think about all the ways it can be good in ways that I just haven't contemplated, haven't considered. So let me see, I wrote down, I guess I've already really mentioned the idea of revisiting your value system, making sure they are serving you and your long-term goals, your sense of purpose. A thing I like to say is like, when we live in a time of like big paradigm shifts, uh this is like the time to just like you reset your paradigm. You set the paradigm, or else it will be set for you, and you'll feel like you're like on a carnival ride from hell. Be a conscious co-creator of your life, because it's the only way you're going to really feel sense of like groundedness, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. That's the thing. And I think that that's going to become more and more apparent in the age of Pluto and Aquarius, because what I'll talk about in the video where we get more into like the history of Pluto and Aquarius and the Aquarian archetype, um, Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. So like Capricorn, we've got Saturn, but Aquarius has a co-ruler, and that is Uranus. And Uranus is like the lightning bolt change. It's like a sort of 1 minute things are one way, and then boom, it's like totally different. It's the great liberator, like the revolutionary. And so it's a very interesting contrast to like the Saturn ruled Capricorn energy. When you go to Aquarius, it's like there is that very Saturnian element of Aquarius, fixed air, but like with the Uranus, like the Uranus is just as loud, and I would argue in like time moving forward, it's going to be very loud. And so it's going to be sort of when I talk about fast pace, that's part of what I mean. But like, I say all these things so that you don't take like sort of this is now different, that's different, that's different. Well, let's look at the last 15 years. Like, we all sort of knew by bearing witness to the last 15 years or longer, that a lot of things weren't sustainable. And so sometimes when enough cans are kicked down the road and all the bills come due at once, well, that's like not exactly the most chill time in life, is it? We've all been there. So can survive it. You can actually thrive in it. It just depends on how you are choosing to look at it. Are you going to sort of like put your head in the sand and just like hope nothing changes? Oh, I hope this is the last change. Oh, I hope today, like this was the last change. Like, no, just sort of you got to believe that you have what you need to get through it, but not only that, to thrive in it. Just sort of let go of your sort of need to control what's never really been within your control anyways. The illusion of control often Don't let that devil card energy keep you in some chains that actually aren't there or can easily be removed. Just because something changes and like your initial like way, your old value system suggests like this is a failure. I have less money now. I have less ability to accumulate things at the store, like those pretty things that I like. Maybe you can evolve like a couple months after that or sooner to be like, is that really a bad thing? You know, I mean, like, so that's what I mean about like your frame of mind. Like, sometimes things come that like seem unfavorable at that moment, and then like you get to evolve to look at it to go, wow, if that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be this like version of myself I am now, to where I feel free of like needing that, or I feel free of like those feelings of inadequacy that came from like comparing myself to the people that had more of those things than I did. You know what I mean? So um I think an interesting thing to do for this new moon energy um is to write down your feelings. Okay, so it's tomorrow. Maybe write down your feelings. Like you can call it like your official lunar journal or not. Like I don't know. Just find a place to put a date on the paper and just take note of your feelings. Like dread, fear, excitement, vulnerability, um, possibility. Don't try to like filter your thoughts. Just like do this sort of free flowing spitting out of like feelings, like words that you would associate with your current state of mind. And then go back to it at the end of this year because if I remember correctly, and I think I do, the very last lunar event of this year is also a new moon in Capricorn, which is really kind of interesting because that new moon in Capricorn will be while, while Pluto is in Aquarius. So it'll be interesting, I think, to really like go back, like have this little like time capsule journal of like where you were on January 11th, 2024, while we had our last new moon in Capricorn co-present with Pluto at that anaretic, that really severe 29th degree. And then at the end of 2024, where we have our new moon in Capricorn that punctuates the year right before we go to 2025, that new moon in Capricorn being present with Pluto now being in Aquarius, um, I think that'll be a really interesting energy to compare where you were and where you end up at the end of the year. So just a suggestion, but I'm going to do it. And I'm not really someone that like regularly writes how I feel at this moon cycle or that. It's really just when there's like something going on in my life or sort of like this um, sort of documentation of my mental state that I want to do. Sometimes I do it by taking photographs, and then I go back in my phone and pull that period of time up and like see the sort of tone of what I was taking pictures of takes on, which is another interesting like component to throw in. I think I'm going to make myself more this year. Just jot down without trying to like filter, like edit before I put down on paper. Just kind of like spill it out and then come back to it and see where I end up. And it's also a good way to find patterns within yourself, but also get a better understanding of like the planetary cycles themselves. So let me see. I think that that's all I wanted to cover. I did want to show you, for those of you that have never seen one, and if you haven't, then this is probably going to look like, you know, hieroglyphics to you, which is fine, but you got to exposure over time is how you get comfortable. I made a chart for the moment of the new moon in Capricorn, and that's going to happen 6:57 a.m. in terms of my local time, Eastern Standard. So I'm just going to hold it up to the camera so you can get an idea of what a chart looks like. So this is an event chart for the new moon in Capricorn, but like this is also what your birth chart would look like because your birth is an event, obviously. I'm going to hold it up, and the yellow highlight is where I've circled it's going to happen. This is Capricorn, and it's the moon, a new moon, just so you know, on a chart. It's where it's conjunct, like right next to the sun. So at the moment of the new moon in Capricorn, we will have the moon and the sun at 20 degrees of Capricorn. On a full moon, which is like the culmination of that lunar cycle's energy, like the max capacity of the moon, you're going to have the sun on the opposite side of the wheel. So a full moon in Capricorn would look like the moon at 20 degrees of Capricorn and the sun at 20 degrees of Cancer. It would be exactly opposite on the wheel. So this is the chart of the new moon in Capricorn, and you see that it's got the full circle, and you see sort of like the planets scattered around among the other signs. So I'm going to try to make this like sort of showing the a lot of people are visual learners, and like you got to start somewhere. And there are a lot of other things going on at the same time as the new moon, and I won't get into all of those because I'm just trying to keep it really simple for people here. But an interesting thing that's also happening is we do have Mars, the planet of action, ruler of Aries and co-ruler of Scorpio. We've got Mars currently in Capricorn as well, so that can also like make you feel productive. It's actually like a really good. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which means it's like you probably feel like, man, like I feel like I can get some work done. I actually feel like being productive, at least comparatively to like other times. But it's trining Jupiter. Trining is a harmonious aspect. So if you don't understand trine, just know that there's a readily available flow of energy happening between Mars, the planet of action, and Jupiter, the planet of expansion and like good fortune. And it's associated with Sagittarius, like higher ideals and morals and ethics. So when you have Mars trining Jupiter, and Jupiter being in another Earth sign of Taurus, these are all lending really well to like planting these seeds in Capricorn, like, and um, backing it up with some action. And so that's where I'm going to depart. Is don't forget about Saturn being in Pisces, and to bring in that emotional part. Like, it's important how you feel. How do I feel about the direction things have gone? And would I like to feel different at the end of this year, when we have our new moon in Capricorn or Pluto is on Aquarius? How would I like to feel different at the end of this year? And what does that mean about the seeds that I need to plant now? And so to me, there's no better way to connect with like the earth and to feel grounded and tethered in an absolutely chaotic like time to live in a lot of ways. Get yourself grounded in these natural cycles, and it also has a way of making you feel like you have a stake in the natural world, where it can be easy to sort of like detach and dissociate for your own like ability to cope. So hope this has been helpful, and check in. I guess the next one I do will be focusing a little bit more into the Aquarian archetype. I think that the first day of Aquarius, I think the sun enters Aquarius on the 21st. I always get the dates, I'm a little rough on the dates, but I think that the last day of the sun being in Capricorn um, is actually, yeah, that's right, because when Pluto moves into Aquarius, it happens to be at the same time that the sun does. So that's going to be an interesting conjunction. We're going to feel, you're not only going to feel Pluto moving into Aquarius on the 20th/21st, it's going to be like conjunct exactly with the sun, like the main luminary, the sun shining, both of them at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So that's going to be some very, very loud Aquarian energy. So I don't know, Aquarius, fellow Aquarius placements, get ready. You're powering up. Anyways, in the meantime, hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.